I played every Theatrhythm Final Fantasy game. Here's my thoughts. So most people don't know this about me, but I'm actually a pretty huge fan of rhythm games. I haven't played them on this channel yet because, well, it's kind of tricky when most rhythm games use copyrighted and licensed music. Theatrhythm is all Square Enix though, and I'm stoked that this series is still alive after a long period of time where it was pretty unclear if we'd ever get another entry. Before we get into it though, I want to first thank my patrons, including That's Just Ash and Meg of Many Names, in the Played Every Game tier, along with all of the wonderful people you see on your screen here. You're all wonderful, and I am super grateful for the support. Alright, let's get into the games. Theatrhythm Final Fantasy was released in 2012 for the Nintendo 3DS, with a port for iOS devices releasing later that year. This game is all about hitting triggers, which are these circular icons that scroll across the screen in different ways depending on the mode that you're playing. I just want to make it clear that if I ever refer to it as a note, just know that I mean trigger. In general, as triggers move across the screen, the idea is to tap the touchscreen at the exact moment it intersects with the activation zone. Depending on how well you did or didn't hit the note, you get feedback ranging from a total miss to a near-perfect critical hit. While the gameplay types vary, the concept of hitting these triggers is the same throughout, and your overall performance in hitting these notes determines your score at the end of any given song. Additionally, how well you hit the notes gives you a letter score too, and these include the standard A, B, C, D scores, but also S, double S, and triple S for hitting all of the notes. And I know that I probably don't have to point this out, but all of the songs in this game and the vast majority of songs in future games are from the Final Fantasy series. While there are some extras in future games that are from other Square Enix properties, the heavy focus is Final Fantasy. So the visual style here and in every subsequent Theatrhythm game is that of these little chibified 2D interpretations of characters from the Final Fantasy series. They almost look like little paper dolls, actually. Interestingly, this style was lifted directly from a somewhat obscure mobile Kingdom Hearts game, but it definitely works really well here. The characters are cute and stylized, but you can still clearly tell who is who. The background environments here, on the other hand, are mostly a full 3D environment, albeit at a fixed camera angle. Still, it's really cool to see some of the more iconic locations from the series represented here, and the locations depend on the song too. The character roster in this game includes protagonists from every main game through Final Fantasy XIII, excluding sequels, along with one or two supporting characters from each entry too. While I can't play that version, the iOS version apparently included a few extra supporting characters on top of that. You have a set party of 4 characters that can be switched out at any time, and you can edit your party at any time outside of stages. Every character has their own stats and skills that can be upgraded and unlocked through using them and leveling up. As you level up individual characters, they unlock new equipable abilities. Each ability uses up what's called CP, and every character has a CP limit. This means that you have to be selective about which abilities you equip, since they can quickly fill up your CP limit. The abilities vary from stat boosts to situational ones that can activate after certain requirements are met too, like hitting a trigger poorly or hitting a certain number of triggers well. Every character also has distinct stats, including their HP, strength, agility, and luck. While HP and strength are pretty self-explanatory, stuff like luck affects how often you get treasure, while things like agility affect how quickly a character moves during the FMS sequences. Speaking of sequences, this game is broken up into different styles depending on what song you're playing. Battle music sequences, or BMS, event music sequences, or EMS, and field music sequences, or FMS. Battle music sequences are songs that are typically battle and boss themes, and in these, your party lines up in classic Final Fantasy fashion. Lined up with each zone, every time you hit a note, the character in that zone performs an attack. During certain portions of the songs called feature zones that you can actually see on the song's timeline, you activate summons. Summons completely replace the party, and for a short time, hitting the notes increases the summon's already powered up attacks. In my opinion, the BMS sequences are the most fun for me, since the songs are usually a lot more upbeat and exciting to play. Plus, I mean, the combat themes in Final Fantasy are pretty iconic too. Event music sequences are songs that are kind of a mixture of songs that you'd see in cutscenes or during other segments of Final Fantasy games. These songs have a cool montage video of the game that they're from playing in the background as you hit the notes on a constantly moving line. These are a bit slower paced from the BMS songs, but I do enjoy the little cool montages. What's interesting is that this mode also has the event zones, but if you miss a note in these, the song just ends prematurely, which is actually kind of brutal, especially since this usually happens during the climax of the song. Oh, and just to interrupt myself for a second, when you're editing your party, you can also equip items that you've earned through gameplay, and these have different effects and activation requirements like potions that automatically restore your HP, or an item that, stops the EMS songs from ending prematurely. Anyways, field music sequences are typically world map or outside themes from the main series, and these have you using just one party member running along the field by themselves. The idea behind these seems to be just getting as far as you can and hitting the notes in the event zone like we saw for the summons a chocobo that runs really fast. These only have one trigger zone and it moves on its own. However, at times during hold notes, you have to move the stylus to match the line on the hold notes to keep it on track. At the end of the hold notes, you have to let go at the right moment or it's considered a miss. That or you have to swipe in a specific direction. There's also one extra little mode that's entirely optional it looks like, and this one is just the intro and ending themes from the main series entry. In this, little music notes fly towards a crystal in the center of the screen, and tapping them at just the right moment earns you 1 rhythmia. During these scenes, you can actually see this cool text effect that goes on a loop. I totally understand why this is optional though, but it is a neat way to cram in a couple of extra songs that wouldn't otherwise work with the game's overall format. Also, I just want to point out that these extra modes don't seem to come back at all in future games. When you complete a standard BMS, EMS, or FMS song, you earn any items that you found during the song as well as these points called rhythmia. The rhythmia you earn depends on a bunch of factors, including how long your longest combo was, how well you hit the notes, having a character in your party from the title that you're playing, and even some weird ones like having an all-male or all-female party. You also earn experience for the party members that participated in the song. Rhythmia is usually used as kind of a milestone metric to unlock more and more features in the games. There are 3 modes in this game: Music Play, Street Pass, and Museum. In Music Play, there's 3 options: Series, Challenge, and Chaos Shrine. Series mode is a mode where you can choose one Final Fantasy game and play a course of its included songs on the basic difficulty. When you complete a course, you get an overview of your performance on each song and an overall ranking on the course itself. If this is the first time you've cleared the course, songs from that game will be unlocked in the Challenge mode. The Challenge mode is a mode where you can replay any songs from any series that you've completed in the series mode, but this time there's added difficulty options. At first, there's the basic difficulty, which is the difficulty from the series mode, but there's also the a little bit more challenging expert difficulty, which throws a lot more triggers at you a lot faster. Completing a song with an A rank or above in the expert difficulty unlocks the ultimate difficulty, which is the highest difficulty offered for the songs in this game. To be honest, the ultimate difficulty is pretty damn challenging with the stylus. The notes come at you way faster, and there's tons of these directional slide notes one after another in some of these songs. But just to make it clear, I absolutely loathe using the stylus in these games, so for those who prefer it, this is probably slightly less of a challenge than it was for me. Finally, there's my favorite mode, the Chaos Shrine mode. After playing the game for a while, you gather enough rhythmia to unlock Chaos Shrine mode and your first Dark Note. Dark Notes is a set of 2 songs, an FMS song and a BMS song, and you never know exactly which 2 songs you'll get because even the names of the Dark Notes are randomized. On top of that, every Dark Note has specific item drops that you get from it depending on your performance too. Most importantly though, is completing Dark Notes can give you these shards that can eventually unlock new playable characters, usually in the form of supporting characters from the various main series games. I do like how it gives you a little silhouette of the character that you earned a shard for though. It kind of teases you on who the character could be, especially since this art style is a bit out of the ordinary. I mean, you can obviously just Google the character roster, but it's more fun this way. This mode has single player and local wireless multiplayer. In the multiplayer mode, you can trade your profit cards with other players that you play with. I'll explain those in a minute. It definitely feels like this mode is the main thing that'd give the game its replay value here, since you never really know what you're gonna get next, and the challenge here is, well, challenging but also fair. Plus, it's always nice feeling like you're making progress and unlocking a new character, and in fact, I think that's what makes it my favorite mode in the whole game. Back to the main menu though, next up is Street Pass. This mode takes advantage of the 3DS's Street Pass functionality and allows you to edit your profile with different characters, themes, colors, and even a fun little tagline using 3 phrases that you can hand pick, or, in my opinion, much better, randomly spin a wheel that chooses your tagline for you. This is pretty fun. Last but not least is the Museum mode. In the Museum, there's Records, which is a list of gameplay accomplishments, followed by Collection, Theater, and Music Player. The Collection mode allows you to look at a binder full of the collecta cards you've unlocked through standard gameplay. These are neat little trading cards featuring characters and enemies from the Final Fantasy series, all in the Theatrhythm style. They not only have fronts and backs, but you can even examine them all closely one at a time too. I actually love how this is presented in like a binder. It's super neat and makes me want to fill it up for that satisfying full page effect. Finally, there's the Theater and Music Players. The Theater allows you to look at the fun montages from the EMS songs that you played previously, and the Music Player, well, it lets you play music without doing the game part. Pretty straightforward. So the big elephant in the room with this game is that it doesn't have a whole ton of songs. It has a handful from Final Final Fantasy 1 through 13, but that's it. For a first try, it's fine, but I got through all the songs pretty quickly. And while there are more difficulty options in the challenge mode and a couple of extra songs in the Chaos Shrine, it still didn't really fix the fact that there's a wealth of Final Fantasy tracks that just aren't here. There was downloadable DLC that included some extra tracks from the games that are already here, and a few tracks from titles like 13-2, but even if I could download them, it's not really worth it considering future games fix this issue entirely. Overall though, this game does lay a really nice foundation for a really good series of rhythm games. Yeah, it feels a little bit clunky, but the visual style is really nice and stylized that makes the game not feel that old. In fact, the visual style and presentation here doesn't change all that much in future titles. It gets iterated on and gets better, but it's pretty clear that this title became timeless for Square Enix. At the end of the day though, even though this is a pretty good game, I would recommend playing one of the newer titles because they essentially do everything this game does, but better. Speaking of newer titles, Theatrhythm Final Fantasy Curtain Call was released in 2014 for the Nintendo 3DS, so I'm just gonna get right into it. This game's best new feature, in my opinion, is the addition of button inputs to activate the triggers. This means that while you can play this game like the first game and just use the touchscreen, you can also just use buttons and the circle pad to do it. I much prefer this and think it's a way more comfortable way to play this game. In fact, this style of gameplay is taken forward in future titles too, becoming the only way to play. But I'll get to that. The modes on the main menu are the music stages, quest medleys, versus mode, street pass, and museum. Music stages mode is very similar to the last games. You have a list of games and their songs. The difference here though is that not every game or song is unlocked at the outset. As you play more songs and earn more rhythmia, you slowly unlock more and more songs for more and more titles. An improvement though is that rather than just choosing a series and playing all of its songs one after another, you can actually go through all of your unlocked songs and play them in any order you choose, without being tied to one specific game. On top of that, you can select a harder difficulty anytime you want. This game's song selection is significantly expanded from the last game. Not only does every main title have way more songs to select from, but there's also way more titles here, including sequels like 10-2, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, and even other spin-offs like Crystal Chronicles and Chocobo's Dungeon. There really isn't a shortage of content here, and while the game eventually stopped getting updates, I can kinda sorta see why they waited nearly a decade to release another full home title, but only kinda. This game also brings back the earnable color shards, but in the main music stages mode this time. On top of that, every shard now represents multiple characters, and if you earn enough shards, you can choose which character to unlock from that set. I much prefer this to the way that it was done in the last game, if only because you immediately have way more character variety. And speaking of character variety, there's a lot more characters in this game, which is really nice since it means you have way more party composition options. Plus, I mean, more series representation is always nice too. There's extra secondary versions of some characters, like Final Fantasy X-2 Yuna added into the mix. The downside to all of this though is that after you pick your initial party when you start the game, those are the only characters that you have until you unlock literally everyone else. This means that because I went with Terra, Lightning, Shantotto, and Y'shtola, they're all I had until I unlocked other characters one by one. Honestly though, a silver lining to this is that it does mean that you'll be spending more time leveling up those specific characters to power them up, rather than constantly changing your party up and essentially starting from zero every time. Like the last game, this game has downloadable DLC, and honestly, it's a pretty nice variety that it adds. Not only do you get new songs from already existing titles, but there's a bunch of other stuff from other Square Enix properties like Chrono Trigger, the Saga series, Mana series, and even Nier. On top of that, there were a handful of DLC characters too, including a couple of new characters and alternate forms for existing characters. Back to the modes though. Quest Medley mode is this game's replacement for the Chaos Notes from the first game. In this, you take on one of a series of quests that include a standard section followed by a dungeon section. When you're in a quest, you see an overview of the quest's progression on a branching path littered with playable songs. Completing a song allows you to move forward in this sometimes branching path. Typically, you only know what game the song is from before you play it, which gives it kind of a fun air of mystery. Once you've completed the first segment of the quest, you go down into a dungeon which is comprised of more songs followed by one or more boss battles. At times, some songs will also include an aetherite, which allows you to return to that song's space if you fail further in the dungeon. There's multiple quest lengths ranging from short, with a handful of songs and a boss, to long, which includes a lot more songs and multiple bosses. There's also inherited quests that you can get from other players you encounter via Street Pass too. Before you start a new quest, you have the option of buying an airship ticket. These can be bought using 3DS Play Coins. There are two kinds, Economy and First Class. Economy costs 2 Play Coins and doesn't get you as far, while the First Class coins cost 20 and take you much further. I'll be talking about the First Class tickets here. With these, you can play the first song in the sequence, but with a slightly different presentation controlling an airship. Completing the song puts you all the way at the end of the standard area and right at the beginning of the quest's dungeon. It's a neat little time saver, but there is a downside. You lose out on experience and rhythmia doing it this way. On top of that, this mode is broken up into days, and every action you take uses up a day. The more days you use up, the higher your experience multiplier becomes. Using these airship tickets causes you to not use nearly as many days. Moving on to the versus mode, this is a mode that can be played online, locally, or against AI. I didn't try the online play, but I did try the AI battles just to see what it was all about. The general idea here is that you and another player are playing the same sequence but with your own parties, and as you clear notes, you begin sending each other these really cumbersome temporary effects. These effects include things like Judgment, which makes the game judge your timing way more harshly, Mystery Triggers, which hides the upcoming trigger type until right before the trigger zone, and a bunch of others too. At the end of the song, you're judged by your scores, and the player with the higher score wins. The Museum mode returns in this game and has pretty much the same interface as the last game, even the little collect-a-card binder is here. However, collect-a-cards now have a secondary use. In the party editor, you can now bound collect-a-cards to characters to increase their stats. You can bind up to 8 of them to a character in the screen, and if you bind enough of a similar type, you get a set bonus, which gives an extra bonus to the improved stats. This is actually pretty neat, especially since using these boosts consumes the card but doesn't remove it from your binder collection. It's cool to have a little bit of an extra incentive to collect these outside of just the eye candy aspect of it. So Curtain Call is an improvement to Theatrhythm in pretty much every way. By far the best addition is the new button control style, but the extra song selection, character roster increase, and the fun new quest medley mode just makes it that much better. I'd say that while the original Theatrhythm doesn't really hold up nowadays, Curtain Call definitely does. Would I recommend playing Curtain Call today? Surprisingly no, but that's because the next game now exists. Theatrhythm Final Bar Line was released in 2023 for the Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4. Speaking of, this is actually the closest I've ever made a video to the release date of a game featured in that video. Anyways, visually, this game brings back the look of the 3DS games essentially unchanged, but everything is upgraded and in crisp high definition, and I personally think it looks beautiful. I especially love the full 3D backgrounds here, and you can clearly tell where each of these locales is inspired by if you're familiar with the game that it's based on. As far as characters, the style is adjusted super subtly, and the characters look ever so slightly different here. In fact, it's super easy to miss without a direct comparison, but what they did was make everyone's eyes slightly more detailed and give the mouth slightly different shapes depending on the character. This makes the characters significantly more expressive in my opinion, and I think is a great evolution of the style without changing it too fundamentally. Another big upgrade is the overall visual effects. In this game, everything's super poppy and colorful, and while there's a lot more going on the screen, it's never distracting or anything in my opinion. It's a super clean and nice look that I think works really well for this series. The biggest functional change to this game is a complete revamp of the control scheme. While it's easy to pick up if you're used to the buttons in Curtain Call, this game requires both sticks to be used. In fact, on a PlayStation controller, the most comfortable way to play this game is by having both thumbs on the left and right sticks and having your index fingers on the L1 and R1 buttons to hit triggers. Some of the notes also require hitting 2 buttons or holds at the same time, or a hold and a button, or multiple directional flicks with the joystick. Sometimes if you're playing the highest difficulty, you'll even get triple notes. In addition to the revamped control scheme, there's also a couple of extra play styles, pair mode and simple mode. While I didn't get to try pair mode, it's a co-op mode where 2 players use 2 separate controllers to play a single song. Simple mode is a style where everything is on one single button press. All directional stick flicks and hold notes are instead replaced by standard triggers and can be done on any difficulty this way. This is super neat for accessibility for those who struggle with the control scheme, or even just people who want to practice the cadence of harder songs with a slightly easier control scheme before taking on the standard version. The modes in this game are the Series Quests, Music Stages, Multi-Battle, Museum, and Profa Cards. Series Quests is the primary gameplay mode here, and in this you begin by selecting one of the available mainline titles. When you choose it, you're put into a stage that looks strikingly like the quest medleys from Curtain Call. The difference here, though, is that all of the songs are from the title that you chose, and you know what you're playing ahead of time. You also play through every song on a linear path, though though at times you have the choice between a few songs and you only need to complete one to progress. Every stage also has a treasure chest which gives you a key to unlock another title. Unlocking a title also unlocks the first playable characters from that title, and clearing a title completely unlocks either the game's antagonist or a supporting character. Speaking of characters, there's a huge number of characters in this game, basically anyone you could immediately associate with any numbered title, and their sequels too. On top of that, characters from spin-offs. There are, however, some titles that don't include playable characters, either because it has the same characters or because there's just nothing to add. And while I'm on characters, the party editing interface is significantly more streamlined here. Not only are there more class options with a wider range of abilities, but you can now equip summon stones that have different attributes. You can also customize the airship that you start the levels with and the outfit that your Moogle companion wears. Hey, Editor Sai here. There's a few things that I forgot to mention that I'm going to mention real fast just as a little addendum. FMS sequences, they feature your entire party rather than just one character at a time. Event music sequences actually show up as individual playable tracks, not during the series quests. You usually unlock them after completing a series quest, but when you do play them, they have a completely different presentation that almost looks like Guitar Hero. Collector cards now give passive stat bonuses whenever you collect them on a per character basis, and this also goes for summons. On top of that, if you collect an enemy collector card, you get an experience bonus for any character that fights that enemy. There's no longer a CP limit to character abilities, meaning that you can equip any ability you have unlocked at any time. Oh, and while I'm here, I have some Editor Sai hot takes. Final Fantasy 15, genuinely good game. I don't know why people hate it so much. It was bad at launch, but it's good now. Final Fantasy 10-2 and 13-2, they are sequels, but they're also genuinely good games. Give them a shot if you haven't. Very underrated. Alright, back to regular Neo Sai. Additionally, there's now an optimize button that automatically chooses all the best abilities and summon stones for you. And to explain summon stones, while I don't fully understand how these work on a deep level, you sometimes earn summon stones as loot during stages, and every one of these seems to have random stats and abilities, I think. Sometimes you'll get a really good one with desirable stats and abilities, other times you'll get something not as good, but maybe with a stat that you want. You can switch out these summon stones anytime you're editing your party, and sometimes you'll even want to change them for completing specific quest requirements. Back to the individual stages in the series mode though. Every stage has mission requirements, and while you don't have to clear these to clear the stage, you get a bonus for completing these requirements. These missions can range from defeating certain enemies or bosses in the stage, dealing a certain amount of damage, or using a certain magic type, or things like earning a certain number of treasure chests. There's quite a few quest types here, and I haven't even scratched the surface. Like I said though, completing these quests is technically optional, especially since a lot of the time your party won't be strong enough to defeat them the first time around. This means that you actually do have incentive to go back and redo some of these stages though, since the rewards can be things like collector cards, items, or even little Moogle outfits. On top of the quests, some stages have what's called a stage effect, and these can either be beneficial or make the stage significantly more challenging. Some stage effects include making your team deal extra damage, making the notes move super fast, or just outright making the scoring more strict, meaning that you have an even smaller window to hit criticals on them. So there's a lot of songs in this game, like a ridiculous number of songs at the time of me making this video, which is only a couple of months after launch. Not only is nearly everything from Curtain Call in here, but tons of more tracks from Final Fantasy 15, Final Fantasy 7 Remake, The World Ends With You, and even Nier games. I know some of this was in Curtain Call, but there's just a lot of it, and of course some of these are DLC tracks, but it's still absolutely bonkers how many tracks are in this game already. And what's even more bonkers is that there's even more tracks on the way as of this video. However, I do have one complaint. While we do have a huge variety of characters and songs in this game that cover a breadth of not only Final Fantasy, but Square Enix titles in general, why in the world don't we have any non-Final Fantasy playable characters? Why can't I have Chrono or 2B in my party? On top of that, I know that Kingdom Hearts already has its own rhythm game made by the same company using a lot of the same design choices, but why can't there be Kingdom Hearts music here? Maybe I'm spoiled and expecting too much, but the precedent for DLC characters was already set with Curtain Call, so why don't we have that here? Anyways, I'm getting off track. Getting back to the mode, I just want to say that I do kind of miss the random nature of the quest medleys and dark notes, but this game has plenty of content that keeps you playing for quite a while, so it's not too big of a deal that those aren't here. They would be really cool DLC, but I doubt they'll do anything like new modes at this point, but I'd love to be proven wrong. Moving on, Music Stages is a mode where you can freely play any song that you've unlocked on any difficulty. And let me tell you, the supreme difficulty in this game, which is the highest difficulty, can be pretty ridiculous. I'd consider myself pretty decent at rhythm games, but this difficulty still destroys surprise me almost every time. Granted, I've only been playing this game for a couple of weeks, but I usually pick up on this stuff pretty fast, so I know I'll get a lot of playtime just trying to get good at these. Next, there's the multi-battle mode, and here you can join or create rooms against other players online. These online matches are pretty similar to how the versus mode worked in Curtain Call, but this time there's up to 4 players, and a lot of these EX burst effects are changed a little bit, like the addition of a fat chocobo that takes up space on the screen, making it way harder to see upcoming triggers, or the addition of a bunch of what I'm gonna call garbage note triggers that can trip you up if you're not paying super close attention. When you start a match, everyone selects a song, and then the game randomly chooses from everyone's selected song, Mario Kart multiplayer style. At the end of the song, everyone's scores tallied up, and each player gets to choose a random collector card, though the winning player does get first dibs. You also have a ranking score that goes up or down based on your performance. After that, you exchange Profa cards and have the choice of playing again with the same group of people or, just leaving. In the museum mode, you can find your collector card collection, the theater mode, music player, gameplay records, and feats, which are like little mini achievements. In the Profa cards mode, they brought pretty much everything from the previous games forward. You can edit your Profa cards, view Profa cards of other players that you've met, and enter passwords for other players' Profa cards. Interestingly, one of the things that you can attach to your Profa card this time, though, is your summon stones, which is a neat way to distinguish your card and actually make it more desirable for others who might want to access that summon. When you exchange Profa cards with somebody, they actually get your summon stone and you get their summon stone. So Final Barline is, in my opinion, the peak of the series. It's got a wealth of songs, characters, difficulty options, and unlockable extra goodies. Bundle that with a really clean, visually impressive, and functional UI, along with some really nice fan service, and you have what is now one of my favorite rhythm games I've ever played. I truly believe that Final Barline has left previous Theatrhythm games in the dust, and I really don't see any reason to go back to them now. Of course, some people might want to revisit Dark Notes or Quest Medley modes, but after the initial feeling of, oh, I kinda miss those, I eventually just kinda forgot about them because I was having so much fun. There's also just a much better challenge to be had here, giving this game so much more replay value. If you like Final Fantasy, or you like rhythm games, or especially if you like both of them, I highly cannot recommend this game enough. Theatrhythm Final Fantasy All-Star Carnival was released in 2016 exclusively in Japanese arcades. So while this game did come out before Final Barline, I wanted to talk about it last since it's a bit unique from the home console releases in this series. Also, the version of this game that I'm playing is modded to have English text and some English UI elements, along with some fixes to make some of the arcade-only features work properly. Normally, the game is entirely in Japanese, and a lot of the features are locked behind a player card. I'll explain that a bit more later, but just know that you're gonna see some translation errors probably. First off though, right off the bat, you can clearly tell that this game was eventually reworked into what would eventually become Final Barline. However, it still sets itself apart in quite a few ways. The game takes a pretty big departure from previous games in its control scheme. Rather than using the stylus or standard buttons, the machine used 2 buttons and 2 large circular half-ball type joysticks. At least that's the best way I can describe them. The control scheme functionally works exactly like it did in Final Barline. The only direct difference that I can see is that the game has directional held notes during the FMS sequences, which is something I have not encountered yet in Final Barline. All the menus are navigated with a touchscreen, so that's different, but once you get into the actual sequences, you only interact with the screen to make your character say a little blurb. So in a normal arcade environment, this game requires a player card that stores your player data on a server. This includes character levels, high scores, collected items, and more, but because those servers no longer exist, a lot of this functionality is lost, even if you're playing in an arcade. However, even with the community-made mods I have installed here, you're still not getting the full arcade experience. Because of that, I wouldn't really recommend playing this game before I even get into its specific features, especially when Final Barline exists and has pretty much all of the content that you can find in this game. At least content that makes sense for a home release. Anyways, into the actual gameplay. Before starting a song, you can enable the co-op duel mode or Fat Chocobo mode. Fat Chocobo mode adds 1 to 3 massive chocobos on the screen that makes the game significantly more challenging by obscuring your view of the notes as they move across. I think there's a score bonus for playing it this way, but it's also just a neat challenge. It's essentially the same thing as Final Barline's EX burst, but something you're intentionally putting on the screen. The song selection here is actually really close to Final Barline's, and I'd even go as far as to say that some of the song sequences are very similar, if not outright the same. So it's kind of hard to go into full detail about what this game has to offer because, well, a lot of its features plain don't work anymore. At the very least, don't work the way that they used to, because this is meant to be played in an arcade with its full online capabilities. It had like a tournament mode, cross-region play, like fun events that were one-offs, little cards that you can earn for seasonal events. Just even if you could find this game in an arcade now, they've all been updated to remove those features as the servers all got shut down. This game is really interesting though. Rhythm games are pretty much staples in arcades, but a licensed rhythm game based on a very specific property is a super interesting choice to bring into that kind of environment. I'd say it worked though. I do wish this game came to America during its heyday outside of the odd round 1 location, but I also understand that this kind of game already has an incredibly niche appeal. And that's it for the Theatrhythm Final Fantasy games. I think this is one of the few series I've played on this channel where I can confidently say that you can basically ignore pretty much everything but the newest entry. I just don't see a reason to play anything but Final Barline unless you really want the touch controls back for some reason. Oh, and I know that there was a Theatrhythm Dragon Quest, and while I will eventually cover that game, I wanted to focus on the Final Fantasy titles in this video. Same goes for Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory, which isn't really a Theatrhythm game, but is developed by the same studio and has a lot of the same concepts. But that'll be in the Kingdom Hearts video, which should be out this year, so don't worry. Alright, I just want to thank all of you for watching and supporting the channel. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to see more content like this, and as always, have a fantastic day.